All right, welcome back to the George Poulos Podcast. I wanted to talk about the temptation to not show up. It's so tempting to not show up because it's so easy. It's so easy to not show up. It's so easy to not work on your bullshit patterns. It's way too easy. And it's difficult to work on your shit. It's difficult to look at your mind. It's a lot of work to investigate your mind and try to figure out why you get so triggered. It is a lot of work, but it's really important. And here's one way to think about why it's so important. And this is what we focused on in our last weekend of meditation teacher training. Okay, so these are the reasons why it's important to show up. Number one, death is certain. And number one has 3 sub-points. So 1A, death must arrive, and when it does, nothing at all can stop it. 1B, our life continually leaks away without pause, and when death comes, we cannot add any more time. 1C, even while we are alive, there is never enough time for practice. What does practice mean? Practice to me means meditation. It means investigating my mind. It means consciously facing my fears. It means choosing love and all those little moments throughout the day. Practicing on the meditation cushion every day is a very important one. But it's also in those little moments when I'm walking out on the street and I have an impulse, an intuitive pull to say hello to someone or to talk to someone, but then my fear mind comes in and tells me why I shouldn't talk to them and why it's embarrassing, etc. Another example is when I have this impulse to record the podcast to speak about what I've learned at meditation teacher training. And then the fear voice comes in and tells me how easy it would be to just skip this week and to not show up. That's what the practice is. The practice is continually pushing the border, continually looking at and uncovering, where am I holding myself back? Where am I not seeing clearly? This is what I keep asking myself this week. Every time I get triggered, I ask myself, how am I not seeing this situation clearly? And when I say the phrase get triggered, it's a very widely encompassing phrase for me. Anytime I'm not peaceful, tranquil, and present, I consider myself to be triggered. So if I wake up in a haste and I'm stressed about work, I'm triggered. If I am at the breakfast table and I'm not really present because there's a storm of thoughts going by about the things that I have to do that day, that's me being triggered. It's not just the big things, it's the little things. And what's cool about embarking on a journey of inner work is every little thing gets to show you somewhere where you have more work to do. Something happened at the breakfast table this morning. That's why I thought of that example where I was actually completely present. This week's been rougher for me, and it was tempting to not show up for the podcast, but thankfully I'm in a bit of an upward spiral, so I was aware enough of the benefits of pushing through and showing up anyway that here I am, thank God. But I woke up with kind of racing thoughts, foggy mind, not really present, not really even seeing. I don't know if you guys feel this too, but when I'm kind of triggered and there's a lot of thoughts going on, I feel like I can't even see. Like my eyes are working technically, but I'm not really seeing what's in front of me because there's so much fog, right? So that's kind of how it's been this week so far. And something that I've experienced on LSD, I call it LSD vision, is I seem to just be able to see clearly for miles and miles away. As far as my vision can see, I see so sharply and so clearly. And it's because there's none of that mind fog. And LSD is not required for this. I have many moments where I'm like, wow, I have that LSD vision again. I'm seeing really clearly. Look, I'm seeing as far as my eye sees. It's interesting when that mind fog is really, really thick. It's almost like I can only see 3 to 5 feet, maybe 10 feet ahead of me at most. I'm in such a self-centered place. I'm worried about myself so much that I can't even see out that far. I hope that makes sense. Back to the breakfast table. So I sat down after a bit of a week of mind fog, a lot of stress, anxiety, particularly because of some work projects I have to do that I've been dreading. I have all these narratives about how I don't want to do them, how they're annoying, all these different things. But I was sitting at the table this morning, drinking my coffee, journaling, and then all of a sudden I heard these distant birds chirping. And those birds snapped me right into it. And all of a sudden I was just there journaling and drinking coffee. There was nothing else. And I noticed all of these things that I wasn't noticing before when I was paying too much attention to the mind fog. I noticed more and more birds chirping. I noticed cars going down the road. I noticed the peace, the utter peace that was this morning. There was a peace that I wasn't seeing before because I was paying attention to the mind fog. So what's interesting about it is that peace was there the whole time I was sitting at the table, but I was only aware of it after I heard these bird sounds and I came back to the present moment. And I sat in that peace and that presence for as long as I possibly could. And I was thinking, and I realized this is always here. This peace is always, always, always here. It doesn't matter what work I have to do this week. It doesn't matter who's across from me at the table. It doesn't matter what they're doing. It doesn't matter what I have to do this weekend, what plans I have next week. That's all mind fog. But there's a way in which I can bring myself to that peace always. I know there is. And I tried to sustain that for as long as I could, and it lasted quite a while. And but then things trigger you again, and it could be as simple as the worry about the project that you have to do later in the day. That can be the trigger. Or it can be a more intense situation, like someone in the house starts yelling at you, right? And then you lose your peace. But isn't there a way in which it doesn't matter what's going on out there? And all of that stuff that's going on right there is part of the peace, right? That feeling of peace that I experienced at the breakfast table this morning, that was within me. Nothing externally changed at all, but something snapped, and there I was. And then I remember my girlfriend wanted to show me a TikTok, and that sort of pulled me out of it again. And I felt the fogginess, the anxiety, the stress start to creep back in. And I'm thinking okay, wow. I'm well aware that there's nothing in my girlfriend showing me a TikTok that is changing the peace of this moment. Why is my girlfriend showing me a TikTok not a part of that peace that I'm seeing, right? So there's something inside for me to work on still. And I'm trying to be as aware of this as I can be, and I'm trying to consciously sustain this peace as long as I can, no matter what projects I'm working on, while I'm working on the projects that are stressing me out. This is the work. Meditation helps with this sort of thing because you're training your mind to focus on the object that you want to focus on. So whether you're focusing on the breath, or you're focusing on a teacher, or you're focusing on the sensation of love, you're training your mind to hold that focus. As you train your mind to hold that focus for longer and longer, your mindfulness increases. Mindfulness is the ability to focus on the thing that you want to focus on. Think about your mind, right? You can even take what your mind has been doing as you've been listening to this podcast. I'm sure there have been moments as you've been listening that without your effort or control or intent, your mind just started paying attention to something else. Whether it was something you're stressed about that you have to do later today or later this week, whether it was a sound that called your attention, or 100 other things that your mind could have been distracted by unintentionally, right? This is the monkey mind that Buddhists are trying to get a control of during the practice of meditation. So on the cushion, you train your mind to hold your focus on the meditation object. Then what you can do out of the cushion is the same thing. The meditation object being that state of complete presence and peace and love and transparency and openness and creativity, and everything else is a distraction. This is what happens on this podcast. I go into rabbit holes. I think it's good for me. We're getting back to the reasons on why it's important to show up. Okay, right? Number one was death is certain. We're going to die. We all act like we're not ever going to die. We're sitting in our deep, dark holes, afraid to express ourselves, afraid to open up, afraid to love each other, as if we're not going to drop dead one day, but we will. We will die one day. This continuity that we're experiencing will end. It's funny how our minds are quick to be like, oh, I can be open later. I can express myself later. I can love that person later. Right now it's too difficult. The fuck? The fuck are we doing? Number one, death is certain. Number two, time of death is uncertain. Right? So we don't know when we're going to die. 2A, the length of life is not fixed. 2B, the things that can kill you are very, very many, whereas the things that can keep you alive are very few. 2C, our bodies are extremely fragile. So this is not meant to instill fear. This is meant to actually ignite a fire. So when I think about my temptation not to show up for my creative expression, not to show up on the meditation cushion, not to show up in each little moment where I know I have a choice between love and fear. When I experience the temptation not to show up, these reminders about death can be very helpful. Because I don't know how much time I have and how much longer am I going to wait. Number 3 might take some explanation because I'm still figuring it out, but I'll try. Number 3, when death arrives, only seeds will help us. So this is referring to karmic seeds. In other words, the actions we've taken throughout our lives are the only things that will help us at the time of death. I'll explain further, but here's 3A. When you die, you go alone. Not a single one of your friends or relatives can come along. 3B. When you die, you can't bring any material wealth with you. 3C. When you die, you must even leave your body behind. Okay, so I tried to explain how I see karma a few episodes back. I think it was episode 49, maybe 50. I think 50. If everything we're doing in this present moment is planting a karmic seed that's going to grow into fruition later, when we're dying, if we're there resisting death, regretting the decisions that we made throughout our lives, that's our karma at the time of death. But if you're at death, happy, rejoicing, excited for the transition, happy with everything you've done in your life because you've lived fully, you loved, you opened, you expressed, then that's your karma. at the time of death. And at the time of death, there's no more planting of seeds. It's just the experience of what you've already planted. If you consider the time of your death, the seeds that you will get to experience are the seeds that you're planting now, and that you'll continue to plant throughout the rest of your life. So that's another way to say why it's important to show up. And for me, showing up looks like what I described. It means sitting on my meditation cushion and with discipline and intent, try to investigate my mind, try to figure out where I'm holding myself back. Where is my ego still coming in? Why do I have these fears still? Because they're ridiculous. Why do I still have them? With urgency, because I'm going to die one day, trying to figure out my mind and trying to direct my mind to a better place so that I can be of service to myself and of service to all beings. And it's showing up in all those other moments. I almost forgot those 3 meditations on death. They also have 3 resolutions. Number 1, knowing that I must die, I promise to take the essence of this life with wisdom. In other words, love others. Because what if it's the last time? And I'm reading off my class notes here, if you couldn't tell. When I'm reading the numbers, these are straight from my notes. Number 2, knowing I could die at any time, I will start today. Right? So this kind of speaks to the procrastination I referred to earlier. Oh, I could love that person later. One day it's going to be easy and then I'll do it. No, you have to do it today. You have to do it today. Say hi to your neighbors today. Don't wait for tomorrow. You don't know if tomorrow's going to come. Record your podcast today. You don't know if you'll have a next week, right? We take life for granted, and that gives us this funny idea that we can procrastinate the things that we want to do, and the betterment of ourselves. We shouldn't procrastinate. Okay. Number 3. And finally, we must focus on what is important in life. A person who is hiking many miles doesn't fill up their pack with a lot of junk they won't be needing. So the first 3 notes I read were meditations on death, certainties about death. When we learned these in meditation teacher training, we were invited to contemplate them for ourselves, see for ourselves if we think they're true or not. They're already obviously true to me. And then the 3 resolutions are, okay, so we have these 3 things we know about death. What do we do about them? And those are the 3 resolutions. And as I've been saying through this whole episode, what does this practically look like for me? It means showing up consistently. It means even though it's comfortable and easy, and there are nice things about hiding. There are really nice things. It's very comfortable. It's very safe. It's nice to be in the cocoon, right? But if we have this one life, we ought to get the experience of being a butterfly. So I'm going to continue to show up, even if I'm scared. Or I'm going to try to, at least, because I'm doing a great job while I'm in this training, but I know my mind, and my mind is ruthless, man. My mind will throw me a new narrative out of nowhere about why I need to hide again. And that's why it's really important for me to keep meditating, because showing up for meditation, it's not that scary. Really, the obstacles to meditation are laziness, procrastination. That's kind of it. But if I show up for that meditation with consistency, with dedication, I've noticed that it gets much, much easier for me to show up in all the other ways, right? In my actual real life. If I'm meditating consistently, I'm closer to myself, I'm closer to my heart, I'm closer to my wisdom, it's easier for me to cut through the bullshit of my mind that comes up in the rest of my life, right? A concise way to put this is on the cushion, I'm training my mind to focus on my breath or my object. So then in real life, when a distraction comes up, in other words, some crazy elaborate ass narrative about why I shouldn't live my life to the fullest, if I'm developing that backbone on the cushion, it's easier to ignore the distraction and keep my attention where I want to keep it in real life. So meditating is really, really important for me. I love this quote that our teacher Hector said in class one day a few weeks ago, and it's that the world needs you good. The world needs you to be okay. Because when you're okay, you're going to express yourself. You're going to say what you need to say. You're going to help people for real. So the world needs you good. So I want to be good so that I can help the world. It's hard to do when you're not good. So it's really important for me to meditate. From day one, I've been scared about what's going to happen after this meditation teacher training. That's going to be the true test for me, right? Because conveniently, no matter how hard I slip during the weeks, I get pushed right back up over the weekend when I attend meditation teacher training. But in a few weeks, that's going to be over, like a snap of a finger. It's going to be over. I'm going to have to really choose to keep going. And I know it's going to be tempting not to. I don't need to be naive about it. I know it's going to be tempting to just drop off this whole path again and to sink back into the comfortable cocoon again. So I'll try to maybe I'll listen to this episode again. When you're going back into the cocoon, you have to have forgotten that you're going to die. Because if that's really at the forefront of your awareness, I just don't think you would do that. Or speaking for myself, I don't think I would do that. I would only go back into the cocoon if I've forgotten that I'm going to die. If I have convinced myself that I'm going to live forever. Then there's time, right? Then you can chill in the cocoon as long as you want until you get bored. But life is not infinite. It's finite. Okay, so here's a note to you, all the listeners, and as well as to my future self. When I inevitably get scared again, please show up. Please continue to show up. I promise it's safe. I promise it's better off when you show up. Please stay. I'll see you next week.